So how did the conversation start? Like, was it one of those things where, and you've never been staunchly against, no, I'm not doing this. Like, that's never you. One of the things that I love doing with you is the show is your openness to doing anything and interviewing almost anybody that piques your interest because, again, you're a conversationalist and you like conversation.
We don't
So
really get anywhere from saying no. You know, that's something that I've really learned over the time is like, you never know. Like, God, we've done episodes with people that I'm like, I don't really know anything about this person. So, you know, when we're like getting ready to do it or like, what's this person's background? What are we getting into? But then like those sometimes end up being like my favorite episodes when you're just like listening to somebody and learning and like all ears, all eyes. Like I love that aspect. And it's funny. I feel like I say that to people all the time. It's like that. I feel like that's kind of what my career has been, is saying yes to opportunities and making the most of them. I've never had this like clear cut, I'm going to do this one thing. Like, yeah, I've got ideas and I've got goals and I've got things that I want to do for sure. But I think a lot of those they like break off from the ideas of things that I've already said yes to, you know, if that makes sense.
So how did the conversation like get broached? Did Tony come up to you one day and was like, "Hey, this is what we're thinking. Would you like to do this?" Like, how did that convo start?
So it's kind of funny because as much as I had been around a lot, I really never talked to Tony about coming into AEW. And a lot of it was this is probably going to sound bad, and I'm sure people are going to take this out of context, but honestly a lot of it was talking to Jon, of being like, man, like I want to be back in the wrestling world. I miss being around it. I miss doing stuff. And you know, as he's like thinking about like what the shows look like and his role on the shows and all that, like most of our conversations were internally between Jon and I, about figuring out like, yeah, I want to do something. I want to come back. I don't know what that conversation is. How are we going to go about that kind of thing? And him and Tony are obviously very close. They spend tons of time talking about things. So I think it was more so like them talking about it, because I don't know if it was like, I think a lot of people just thought that I was sort of like done with wrestling to a degree. And maybe they didn't want to like ask me to do something they thought that I didn't want to do, or they didn't want to step on Jon's toes or any of those things. Like it could have been, and those are all very real things that could have been. But yeah, I think like it was just the timing of everything as well. You know, I think for me trying to like, I just want to get in there and like, I just want to work, you know, like I want to be there as a broadcaster, as a personality. I want to be able to help other people if they want help or need help on things. Like I want to be an ear for people in any way that I can. Yeah, just kind of use, you know, my 8 years experience having worked in WWE to seeing how I can sort of help in AEW now.
Right. And not to talk out of school, because this is not what we're about, but you can tell that they're on air, like interview people, like they need help. They need some mentoring a little bit. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
here's what I'll say though too, is like I always think that the interviewer role in professional wrestling has been a very, God, what is like the word? I don't want to say like a misunderstood or undervalued position. I guess undervalued might be the word. Yeah. Because a lot of times they're supposed to be invisible, so to speak, in the sense of like the way that a referee is. You're not there. You're not selling tickets. You're not the big character. People aren't coming to see you. So, you know, and that's always been like the vibe of like, don't say anything, don't react to anything. And then you end up with people that do kind of end up being a mic stand. That's always been how it has been. And I had to fight that my whole time in WWE, of like trying to have subtle reactions to things, trying to get my personality out there more. And I think being able to achieve that over my time being there. But I think, you know, often the role of being an interviewer in a pro wrestling space can be a little bit of a funny, it's very odd waters to navigate sometimes in terms of how much personality are we doing, how much of ourselves are we bringing forward, how can we make the talent better, how can we help the wrestlers better, how do we give them that spotlight during a promo, during an interview. And this is going to be a different situation with AEW as well, because, my time with WWE was very much so like, here's the interview, here's the script, this is what we're going to do. And that's not how AEW operates. So that's exciting for me, given the time that we've had doing this show, me doing interviews over the past however long, is now I get to like actually interview people, if that makes sense. And not that I was reading scripts before and I enjoy doing that, but this is a different, like, actually interviewing people about things.
Right. Like they would hand you the script. Let's just say, we'll just say this. Okay. My guest right now, Braun Strowman.
Yeah. No, it's this. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my guest at this time, the monster among men, Braun Strowman. Braun, tonight you're going to be facing the beast Brock Lesnar. And how do you think you're going to overcome these odds? Like, that's how it is. And like, it's fine because you're just, you're passing the baton. You're giving the guy the moment to say what he needs to say. And then
that was smooth, by the way.
Yeah, duh.
Like
been there, done that.
So yeah, I like the fact that you can play with multiple like colors now when you're painting this broader picture, right? And
yeah, and honestly, I don't even really know what that looks like yet, and I need to be cognizant of that because I think it could be very easy to just go, oh, I'm just going to do the Renee Young thing again, but that's not what I'm doing here. Here, and this is the funny part about it too, right? When you are socially conditioned in the world of professional wrestling, specifically WWE, right? Because if you read like Twitter or like how people review the shows, everybody assumes because WWE's been around longer and they've been doing TV a specific way, every single wrestling company has to like be the WWE broadcast model, right? Right.
So you're socially conditioned already to assume that this person, not Renee Paquette, Renee Young, she's going to emulate this. So now, like, got her there. Now she's going to do the same thing here. Well, that's not the ethos of that company.
That's also not how a person grows. Right. If I wanted to continue to do that, I could have continued to do that, more or less. Right. Where now it is a different thing where it's like, first of all, and this is like, it's probably such a small thing to anybody else, but it really means a lot to me now to like be on camera represented as Renee Paquette and to have my actual name out there. It's like, it's huge. It's so crazy. It is really cool. I didn't even realize like during my time as my name being Renee Young, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like that's the name I go by now. Fine, whatever. But now to be like back as Renee Paquette and like really have that as a stamp it means a lot to me. It's really cool.
It takes a lot of work to not be the thing that you're used to people calling you. You know what I'm saying? Like, and Jon had to go through with it. Like you had to go through with it. I mean, a ton of other professional wrestlers had to do it as well. Where it's like you have to shake off like that other name and go back to the thing that you want to be called or you want to be referred to as. I mean, there's some people still that call him Dean.
Oh my God, of course.
And
that's just the way it goes in wrestling anyways, where like, it's funny. Him and I can walk down the street and for like every like 5 people that yell out the window, Mox, we love you, Mox. There's like one person's like, I love Dean Ambrose. So like it still happens, it is what it is.
You have, and again, you and Saraya and like, you've had these like years of experience. WWE ages you in dog years.
Oh my God, does it ever? That's a really good line. I like that.
So for you to come in, you're going to have a completely different like scope of thinking where somebody that's in it already is already in the AEW system might not look at it from a different set of peepers. And you might come in and say, hey, here's a crazy idea. Mm-hmm. Why don't you do it like this? I know you've been so fixated on it like this. Why don't you try saying something like this?
Yeah.
And then like you're giving them a fresh option. So I think that's dope. So you had the
I think that's like a really cool time too. Is like that is the thing. Is like I think giving people different ways to think about things or look at things, and especially with AEW where there are lots of wrestlers that have had tons of experience, but it's different than having like television experience as well. Right. It's one thing to do a show and have matches, but I think when you're getting into like that, not that I'm going to tell a wrestler how to like wrestle on TV. Obviously I don't know anything about that, but like just in terms of like, promos and all that stuff, camera awareness, all those things.
Well, again, just to circle back, because you said initially the conversations were with John, and then John and Tony probably had a discussion about it, and then Tony probably had a discussion with you about
It all
it.
happened
And
really fast. Like it
that's how
literally
it
happened
is
so
amazing.
fast where like all of a sudden like John and I have been talking about it, and then like yeah, it felt like the next day my manager is calling me being like, "Oh yeah, they're reaching out. I'm getting the contracts coming through." Da, da, da. I was like, "Wow, that was like a real quick turnaround. Holy shit."
Yeah. So did you initially? What did he say with you? Like, did he like? What was his like words of assurance? What was like? Not even the creative rollout. But what did he tell you? Was there any like concerns or fears on your part to go from one company to the next company? Like, what was that? Did you have any trepidation? Like, how was he talking to you like during the process? Because interviewing him and just speaking to him in passing is a completely different beast. As to now, he's going to be your employer. So like, how did that conversation go?
So, you mean the conversation I had with John?
Um, no, because
The
Tony.
conversation I had with Tony.
Yeah, I got some John questions I'm gonna ask
Oh.
after that. So.
So it's funny because during all of this, I've not even talked to Tony all that much about it just because there's not really been much that we need to talk about until now I'm there. You know, I think it's like the lead up to is kind of like, cool, come in. He knows my skill set. He knows what I'm bringing to the table. So I think it's more of a, let's get you in here. Let's just start working. And, I think we like figure it out as we go. Cause yeah, I mean, he knows what I bring to the table in terms of, being on camera, my years of working in this world and all of that to the stuff that I've been able to do outside of wrestling. So yeah, I think it's a figure it out as we go kind of situation. But and that sounds like so vague, but I just think it's not like I'm main eventing anything, It's like I'm going to be out there conducting interviews and like being a personality for them. So I think as those opportunities come up and we know that that's the narrative in which some of the storytelling is going to be told, I can come in and help out there.